Even though the garden and everything is lying dormant right now, and we are in the midst of the winter, inside the house, we're enjoying all of the bounty that the garden and the land provided. With weather like that, I'm grateful to be indoors and have all of our garden and the food that the land provided safely inside and stored for the winter. I thought I would show you what we have left in our pantry from the garden to help you plan out what you're going to be planting this year so that you can have a fully stocked pantry and larder from your homegrown food as well. So in this corner of the kitchen, this is where I keep the onions. I've got some sweet potatoes, which we did not grow the sweet potatoes. Unfortunately, we're so far north that we're usually not hot enough to grow sweet potatoes. So the sweet potatoes are the one thing that you're going to be seeing. We did not grow here. But this is where I keep my garlic and my onions, which we grew here. And I keep the stock just that I am cooking with right now in my kitchen in this area because this basket is hanging next to a northern facing window, so it doesn't get a lot of light, especially this time of year in the Pacific Northwest, and not really any direct sunlight. But anytime that you have food near light, it's going to degrade faster and or can encourage sprouting and things like garlic or onions that would start to sprout. So this is just where I keep what I'm going to be using for the week and not my main stock. Directly below my onion baskets, here is the spaghetti squash. This is the remainder of what I have left from the spaghetti squash, and this was harvested and cured in September. And at the time of this recording, we are in January, and this is just in the floor of my kitchen, so no special cool temperatures or controlled humidity. And spaghetti squash, when cured correctly, has a really long shelf life. It might not be very homesteady of me, but I tell you what, I love cooking my winter squash in the Instapot, especially when I haven't necessarily planned ahead. It's one of the beautiful things about having a fully stocked pantry with homegrown food. You might not be planning ahead, but you always have something to cook for supper. This is red enchilium soft net garlic, and it's one of our favorite types of garlic to grow. It was actually rediscovered on the Colville Indian Reservation in Washington State, and it's a great garlic. It develops in its flavor the longer that you have it stored and cured, and it also stores really well. So all of the garlic that we grew and harvested over the summer will last me clear through until next summer. And these are our copra onions. And again, these are a great storage one that I'll talk about more in the video when we do our tour. But I love knowing that these came from our land. I have to tell you, when I'm making a sauce or a stew or a soup, and oftentimes even casseroles, I rarely follow a recipe. Kind of like recipes are a guideline when it comes to cooking supper. But the base of pretty much every stew or sauce, and even casserole that I make, is always going to involve garlic, onions, butter, and some salt and pepper. This one I'm making a crab Alfredo, so some cream cheese is definitely in order, along with some real full cream. This is all about bringing on the fats and the flavor. Even though in the midst of summer, in the midst of preserving, I can get a little bit overwhelmed or it feels super busy sometimes, I love when the winter months come how easy it is for me to pull together our dinner using everything that we put up. This is crab that we caught in our little ski boat out on the bay. And so we freeze it, and then I just thaw it for dinner. And this whole dinner, you guys, comes together only about 30 minutes. And that includes the cook time that it takes in the Instapot for the spaghetti squash. And of course, we're going to toss in, I like to throw in thyme with this recipe, dried herbs that came straight from the herb garden during the summer. Everything except the cream and the cream cheese and the butter. So all of the dairy. We don't have a dairy animal yet. Came from either our land or we went and caught it. I think I've always been an old soul and a homesteader because at 8 years old, I started collecting for my hope chest. Yes, old-fashioned girl a hope chest, these blue willow dishes. So 30 years later, 31, I just had a birthday. So 31 years later, they are still the exact same plates and bowls. I've added to them, of course, but that I started collecting at 8 years old. A little bit more dried time, and then dinner is ready to serve. Even though we're in the middle of winter and the most of the garden is in dormancy, there's something about using all of this food that came off of our own land that starts to prep the soul and get you ready for the spring and gardening season that's just around the corner. Because I gotta tell you, as much as I love the self-sufficiency and the health of the homegrown food, y'all, it's all about the way it tastes, and I am a foodie at heart. Now we are in my laundry room and our back pantry, which is the coolest spot in our house. So there are no windows to the outside, and this is the farthest away from our wood stove, which is our source of heat, that you can get. So this is where I do our main back storage for the longest shelf life of all of our crops. So this is where I still have one of the braids of our onions, and this is the one that will get moved from here, and then I will transfer it into that basket as I go through those crops in there. But these onions were all harvested and cured in August, and we're now in January, which is almost the midpoint for me. So this is a great time of year for me to look at and see if I've got enough of this food to last for another full 6 months before my main harvest time of our annual summer vegetable garden will be on, which is what I consider my onions. This is the last of the winter squash. So I've got some butternut squash left, as well as my sugar pie pumpkins. And these ones, again, they were all harvested and cured in September and brought in before our killing frost in October, when we still had warm enough temperatures to cure them out. So I've got 3 butternut left and 4 of my pumpkins. And this has just been on I keep these on the floor because heat rises. So this is going to keep these the coolest to help prolong their shelf life. And I do come in and check them periodically just to make sure that I don't have any bits of rot or anything where they're starting to break down. But these are holding on really well. So I plan to use these up within the next couple of months, but this is what we have left of our storage of all of the pumpkins and the winter squash. I found that the butternut squash and the pumpkins don't last quite as long as the spaghetti squash, so that's why I moved these to this cooler area and keep the spaghetti squash because it stores longer in the floor of the kitchen. This is what originally in the house was a coat closet, or where you could store like vacuum cleaners, and I do still keep my broom in here, but we have transformed this by adding in a whole bunch of shelving that wasn't here instead to our long-term pantry and larder storage. Again, there's no windows in here. It's furthest away from our wood stove, so even though it's not as cool as an attached garage or an actual root cellar, it is the coolest spot in our house. And so this offers me the longest. So you can see I've got another braid of our garlic. This is soft neck red enchilium garlic, which was originally found in Wenatchee on the Colville Indian Reservation. And so this is one of our favorite strains of garlic to grow. I like to do this soft neck. It tends to have a really great storage life and doesn't sprout for me, and does really well here in our Pacific Northwest climate of Washington State. Then I've also got one more braid of onions. These were copra onions. Again, I like to pick varieties because I know I'm going to be having them for long-term storage that do have a long storage life. So the copra onion has done really well for us. It doesn't sprout on me. It stays good when cured. And I've got some video links I'll pop in below on curing. I know that you've heard me mentioning that quite a bit when I talked about the squash as well as the onions and garlic, but curing is the key thing to making sure that you do have that long-term storage shelf life. And so we make sure that we do those. So I'll pop beneath here those video links so that you can check that out. But definitely some things as you're beginning to plan your garden and the different varieties that you're going to be planting this year. If long-term food storage is your goal, which I hope it is, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to getting some of those varieties in your planning. So you'll see that I keep a lot of the same things on my pantry shelves if you watch the pantry video tour that I did last year. And that's because I know what we eat and I preserve the food that I know my family enjoys and eats so that we are growing what we eat and we eat what we grow. So here I've got more of our favorite garlic dill pickles, and then here I've got some spears. This is great grandma's mustard relish pickles, which are fabulous. There's the recipe and video I'll put in below that I shared with you guys already so that you can watch that and make that one. You definitely want to plan on putting in enough cucumbers to do this relish. It's fabulous. I have got some applesauce, and this is actually pear sauce. I prefer pear sauce, quite honestly. It's my favorite over applesauce, but we've got some of both. The garlic braid. Here I still have some of our pickled jalapenos and some rhubarb barbecue sauce, the copra onions. Then we come down and I've got here restocked with pickled beets, which is one of my absolute favorites. I love pickled beets. So I've got my jars of pickled beets restocked, tomato sauce, of course. And then I've got a few jars over here of my red garlic pepper jelly, which is another one of my favorites. And then we have got quite a bit of salsa here, more tomato sauce. Can you ever have too much tomato sauce? I don't think so. It's so versatile. It's my favorite. And then over here, I've got a few more jars of the mustard pickle relish, more of our garlic dill pickles. And then I've also got home canned and grown shell white beans. These are actually my family's Tar Heel green pole beans that we have been seed saving for over 100 years. And this is when you let it fully mature and then you shell it out as a shelled bean. So this is what it looks like when it's the shelled bean, and I can those up fresh. That tutorial is on YouTube as well, so I'll put that link in and you can check that out if you want to learn how to pressure can. And then this is what they look like when they are as a green bean. So I get two types of bean from the same plant, my fresh eating green beans and my white beans to use in soups and stews and all kinds of fun things. Some more pickles. I know sometimes you can have too many pickles, but I have it calculated pretty well for what we'll go through in a year. My daughter and I love pickles. We use them in all kinds of things. So we just like to eat them straight out of the jar as well. So I've got a good stock there. Some of my jars are starting to get empty as we're going through. Got some pasta, homemade apple cider vinegar. And then here's more of my dry goods. The carrots are from us. So, and then this is some dehydrated up tomato peel. Actually, I had to think for a minute. I hadn't labeled which that one was. And then these are not from here. I've got some buckwheat and some quinoa and rice, but those have not been grown here on the homestead. So this is in the corner of my kitchen. So this is where I keep my stock when I'm rotating. This is the stuff that needs to be used up first. So this is the oldest. And then I pull from that back pantry and restock in here. So I kind of use that back pantry as like you would your when you were going shopping or as my grocery store to pull into what I need to be using right now in our kitchen and obviously in my cooking if it's in my kitchen. Now, even though I cured and have quite a few of my pumpkins still left, I know that they won't keep forever, and I won't be harvesting my pumpkins well until the end of next summer, beginning of fall. So I also pressure canned up my pumpkin, and I've got some quarts of canned pumpkin. Now, the only safe way that you can can pumpkin or winter squash is one, in a pressure canner, and two is in a cubed format like this. It can't be pureed or up or like pumpkin butter or pumpkin pie filling, but it is safe to can pumpkin when it is cubed with a pressure canner. So I have done quite a few quarts of my canned pumpkin like this. More pickled beets, Mama's favorite. And I have just a few jars of pickled beans, and then we've got a whole bunch of pickled asparagus. So up here is where I've got the majority of my pie fillings. So I have got cherry pie filling, blackberry pie filling, apple pie filling, and then I have a few more quarts of my pears and peaches left as well. I don't have a ton of pie filling left because the majority of what I put up we used during the holidays. We did a whole bunch of bake sales for my daughter's basketball team as well as baking for my family over Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I do have enough to take me through. I don't usually make as many pies as we move into the middle of winter and springtime. And of course, then the rest of my berries will begin producing again. Usually we'll start to get our strawberries in May, and then as we move into June and July. So I know my fruit stuff will start to be replenished, especially with the berries and the rhubarb, within about 4 to 5 months from now. This time of year, I like to have a lot of broth done up. I tend to do a lot more soups and stews during the winter months when it's cold out, and then cold and flu season. Of course, one of the things that I like to have on hand if you're not feeling very well is homemade bone broth. So many good things and properties to that. So I make sure that we're really stocked up, and I just canned another run of beef broth just this weekend. And although this isn't canned, I still keep it in this cupboard because this is homemade, and I used up my onions and garlic, our apple cider vinegar with some jalapenos and some different of my herbs to make homemade fire cider, which is one of our key things to have on hand, especially during cold and flu season. It's one of my main natural medicines. And so this is just a little bit that I had left over from last year. And then this is the new batch that I just made and strained so that we'll have this on hand for this year as well. This is my stock of dried cherries, which is my favorite. I tend to be the one that gets into these and eats them the most. So note to self, I need to double, maybe even triple the amount of cherries that we dehydrate, because they are my absolute favorite snack. Of all the dehydrated fruits, cherries are my number one. In fact, I'm putting in more cherry trees this year just so that I have more cherries and I can dehydrate them from our own trees. Right now, I'm currently getting some from a family friend who has a big farm east of the mountains from us where cherries grow really, really well, in order to keep myself well stocked in cherries. This is my jam and jelly shelf, which I don't have as much. My kids just don't eat as much jam and jelly as they used to. So I've really learned to kind of pare back and not do as much, but of course we still have to have some. So here is raspberry jam, and this is still some more of that rhubarb barbecue sauce that I put up every year. And then I have got blueberry syrup. This is a little bit of blueberry syrup as well. You can see it's a lot more liquidy in there for pancakes. And then I have some old canning lids that apparently are just sitting there for decoration, I guess. And then I've got blueberry jam. We have a lot of blueberry jam, more blueberry jam. This is hair butter. I think this one is peach butter. I didn't actually label it. Shame on me. I should have, and then I would know. But the pear butter is the lighter, and that's my favorite. And then I do still have some of our strawberry jam. And then this is my spiced plum butter. I hope that you enjoyed that tour and seeing what we have left from the food that we put up and grew last year here on our garden, with the exception of some of those cherries, because this is the perfect time for you to evaluate and plan out what you are going to be growing and putting into your garden so that you can eat from a year's worth of food. If you want to get your hands on my garden planning charts that tell you exactly how much to plant per person for a year's worth of food, not only on your vegetables, but also all of your fruits. So if you plan on putting in berries and a mini orchard and fruit trees, it's going to walk you through and let you know how much you need of each of those per person. All the work done for you to take you through a year's worth of food. So this is our fruit planting chart. And then here you move into all of the different vegetables done in alphabetical order. You want to get your hands on the Family Garden Plan, which is my brand new book, as well as bonuses that are going to walk you through companion planting and crop planting as you plan everything out, including seed saving, so that you are as self-sufficient as possible and growing as much of your own food as you can. To find out more information on the book and to get those bonuses, go to familygardenplan.com. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of our weekly videos that I put out every Wednesday. Let me know below what you plan on growing a year's worth of for your family this coming growing season. And if you have any topics that you would like to see me do in videos, let me know below. I can't wait to see you next week.